Good to go? All right. All right. I'm Mario, and this is Chris. We're from Highland Software, and we're going to talk about security omnipresence, infiltrating every level of a mature development lifecycle. So it's easy for us security professionals to feel like we're alone, especially when we're dealing with mature processes that are already in place in our companies. And even if we do get into those processes, we're vastly outnumbered. There are many more developers and many more QA testers than there are security people. So because of that, we have to worry about being everywhere at once so that we can deploy our security practices and our security processes. And how can we do that? How can we be everywhere at once when we're so outnumbered? Let's take a look. First of all, I don't think any of you will disagree with me that security is hard. It's a hard job to do, and it takes us years to learn all this stuff. And it's always changing, so every day we're still learning new things. How can you expect someone who's not familiar with this security landscape to understand the importance of security concepts and security mindset? So, no matter what, it still falls to us to transmit this message, to give these people the mindset that security is important and that they should focus on it. But giving them these tools and this knowledge is, even harder than it is to learn security to begin with. They have, different goals and different perspectives about their processes. They live in completely different worlds than we do. We live in a world of controls and paranoia and always being told no about everything. Trying to implement security, no, because it costs too much, blah, 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 blah. They don't live in that world. They have their own world. They have their own processes. This is what their world looks like. It's robust, it's rigid, it's full of contingencies and everything. And we have that stuff too. But their world is a lot more locked in place. Here's a piece that one of the founders put in, and now it's gospel. And you want to come in and shake things up and put this security thing in place, who, for them, you're just an afterthought. You're just someone who's, trying to mess up this perfect little world that they have. So it's not going to happen. You're not going to just come in and change one of the pieces to include security everywhere. So that being said, here's the truth about you in their world.
The truth is that you have no power in their world, right? Their world was built without you guys in mind. It was built without security in mind. As far as they're concerned, everything that they have is working, right? Their processes are built to maximize profits, to make sure everything runs smoothly. Security is not even a thought. And those are their goals. And as far as they're concerned, you guys are something of an adversary to their goals, right? You guys can't do anything to decrease their delays or increase their profitability. They see you as something of an adversary, right? They think you're a risk to their bottom line, not their practices. But there's a way you can get some power in their world. You hold some already that they don't realize because you know things that they don't know. You know that security is an important part of every development lifecycle. You know that security is important for profitability. Last year, the average organizational breach in the U.S. was a cost of $5 million. Do you think they would still treat you as some sort of adversary if they knew you could save them millions of dollars on their bottom line? They think that you are just going to add more time to their processes, that you're going to put more checkboxes on their already long lists. But you know that not doing this takes even more time, because then you have to draft bulletins to your customers, issue patches, retest and redevelop things that were supposedly already finalized. All that adds a ridiculous amount of time and cost to your processes. So as we said, they think that you're something of an adversary to their goals. So they see you as a bit of an intruder when you try and go into their world. So maybe it's time we start acting like one. After all, what's security all about? It's about breaking into areas that you're not supposed to be in, right? Subversion is your friend. You know how to use it. So just do what you do best. You can't get in the front way, or the way they all got in. They know that area. They jealously guard it. Why play to their strengths? Find unexpected venues of attack, right? That's what we did. Well, that's what we did eventually. We probably know, honestly, less about security than most of the people in this room. And we tried the same things that we just told you not to. We checked the front door, we found it locked. Back in the early days of our program, security was handled by a single person, which I imagine is where a lot of you are in your organizations. It was just one guy by himself trying to get penetration into these processes, constantly looking for a way in and trying everything to do it.
And we do mean that he tried everything. He wrote presentations and delivered presentations. He took the lead in responding to any security-related RFPs that came in. He wrote tons of the documentation highlighting, proper security procedures. Did some in-house testing by himself, and even took the initiative to seek out third-party assessors to test against our product. But even with all this effort, he still didn't get much traction in the company as a whole, because his presentations were not very well attended. His RFP responses were lacking because he was just doing the best he could, except he couldn't boast about any security posture that we had because we had no security posture. So what do you say in an RFP in that case? His documentation was very thorough and very technical, but seldom referenced because, again, security wasn't part of the process. And the in-house testing was a noble effort, but what can a single guy do against years of rapid development of a product by a team of many, many developers? So one thing you could do is get those third-party assessors to come evaluate your software, your environment. And that could actually really work well for you if you have an unlimited budget and you can communicate exactly all your needs and expectations to those third-party assessors, and you can trust them to not miss absolutely anything. But that would all be nice, but this is the real world, and we don't have the luxury of depending on something like that. So without this fairy tale of third-party assessments, what can we do? What are our options? Well, that's our only option. We have to break through. Like we said before, don't try the front door because that way is locked. You have to summon a little creativity to start your security deployment, let's say. So arguably the best way of intruding into any process is through social engineering. You have to gain your target's trust, empathize with them, and find out what's important to them and make that your priority, to make that what's important to you. So what is it that's most important to really any company or any business unit at all?
So the customer is the most important thing to the business unit, right? Without the customers, they can't do anything. They don't have to worry about their bottom line, and they don't have to worry about their processes because no one's buying what's coming out the other end. Without the customer, they can't do anything. The customer's king. Unfortunately for us, we didn't figure this out on our own as soon as we should have. We weren't sure exactly how to link what was most meaningful to us as the security team, which was a secure product, to what was most important to the business unit, which is the customer, in some sort of meaningful way that would grant us entry into their processes. But actually, we got lucky, and we didn't have to figure this out on our own. Like we said earlier, that in the early days, we didn't have much of a security posture to talk about. And there were plenty of holes in place, but no one to find them, let alone remediate them. If you don't take security seriously as an organization, eventually you'll run into somebody who does. And when you do, it won't be pretty. For us, it was one of our customers. One of our biggest customers actually commissioned a penetration test of their environment, and our product was in scope. When the results came back, they found out that they had several vulnerabilities in place, and several of them were due to our product being on their network. Obviously, they weren't happy about this at all, and they came to us looking for answers.
So needless to say, our executive team freaked out a little bit, and we, on our end, did all we could do, really. We took those vulnerabilities that they found, and we put them in our bug tracking process, and we treated them like we treated any other bug. because we didn't even have the resources and the processes in place to treat them like security vulnerabilities. And the whole experience was definitely jarring, but it turned out to be exactly what we needed. We soon after, our executive team agreed that it was time to prioritize security. So soon we had a budget and the executive buy-in to start creating an official security program under the umbrella of the development department. And I know what you're thinking, I can't just sit around and wait for the sky to fall so that people will eventually come into my way of thinking. And you're absolutely right. But we're hoping here tonight that with our example, you're able to do something that we weren't able to do from the beginning. And that is, you can beat the inevitable. So, like we mentioned, if your organization isn't taking security seriously, at some point you'll run into someone who is, and when that happens, something bad will go on. And yeah, that will probably scare people into coming into your way of thinking, into giving security the priority that it deserves. But even though an event like that would have that effect won't last throughout your development life cycle or even the life cycle of your company, because even though fear is a good initial motivator, that initial sting will quickly just fade away, and they'll fall back into their old processes. So to really infiltrate those long-standing processes, you'll need some executive buy-in. You can illustrate the repercussions of these breaches, and not only the monetary ones, but also the reputational ones. You can gather any and all examples that you can find of RFPs that you come across, or vulnerabilities that you come across, or you can prepare those vulnerability assessments that you launch against your own product. But you have to make sure that you do all of this in a very clear way that they will understand. You can't just show them all the security jargon. They'll just ignore it completely. You have to communicate it in a way that management will understand. You have to tell them and illustrate exactly what the effect would be if these vulnerabilities got exploited, or if your company lost its reputation, or if your company had to deal with a major breach and all the monetary costs involved. Because if they fail to understand what you're really trying to communicate, again, they'll just fall back into their old processes. So the bottom line is you need to make what you're doing, your security job, indistinguishable from what the business process itself is doing. And this is something that we've been really successful at with our security program. As a software company, the majority of our product decisions happens in two places, development and QA. And with that last little scare, development got a head start. But what about QA?
So how does QA operate? Their big thing is planning, right? QA has test plans. They plan a ridiculous number of meetings. They're pumping out documentation left and right. They're always looking at what's coming down the pipe next. Planning is how they live. And as we said earlier, to really get into an organization, you need to take what's important to them and make it important to you. So the planning was definitely an in for us. QA is not unlike security to a certain extent. They have a hard time measuring their value. They have a hard time demonstrating that value. A lot of people view them as a drain on the system more than a necessary piece. Sometimes they're not brought in until it's too late. And they understand your pain as a security person. They understand what you're going through. So because we understood these things about security, we were able to connect with them on a level that they understood. So to them, planning is priceless. So what we did was we laid out a plan that we thought they would appeal to them. We created a presentation and gave it to the QA managers, talked about how we could take their current QA testers and give them the security training they need to be essentially penetration testers within the company in just a few years. And it was a detailed plan. It had timelines, personnel requirements, resource requirements, and it clearly separated those requirements from the nice-to-haves. But most importantly, it showed how all of this could be done without any sort of real investment. So like we said earlier, QA is like security to a certain extent. They don't bring in money directly. They prevent it from being lost, right? So they have a hard time asking for money when they need it. So QA is not going to provide any sort of financial assistance unless you can provide value to them. So here's the second thing that, go ahead, next thing that QA knows. Even though this plan said that we weren't going to ask for any sort of funding or anything, they know that things could possibly change down the line, right? They're used to their plans becoming useless at a certain point. They know that just because they've done all of this planning in the early stages, that these plans won't become, it's not necessary that these plans won't become obsolete sometime in the near future. Planning is important though, it lays out direction, it defines scope, it gives everyone something to root for, but the saying goes, no plan survives contact with the enemy. And QA knows this too. So QA and security are both about finding out what it is that you don't know and then reacting to it. So use these commonalities to get in with them. So that's why they know that these things change. That's why when you ask for a little bit of money later on down the line, if you end up needing it, you can do that and they'll understand. But you can't get something for nothing from them. You need to show them that you can provide value. So how did we do that? In short, we tried everything. At the time, like we said earlier, most of you guys probably know more about security than we do. This was definitely true at the time this project started. Almost all of my security knowledge was conceptual. So, I'm not sure how I'm going to take these people who don't have any security knowledge and bring them up to a penetration tester level. I'm not a penetration tester. How am I going to create some? So I just did what I knew. First, we gathered the people, right? This was a lot easier than it sounds. We just, everyone thinks hacking sounds cool, right? And these people already work in tech, so they know that something like this doesn't come easy. They know that they're going to have to put a lot of work into it. So with the idea in mind that if you find people who are interested and then find people who are willing to do the work, everything else can be taught. We weren't worried about any sort of prior security knowledge. In fact, almost everybody in that class had no security knowledge at all. So I took what little security knowledge I had at the time, every concept that you find in every Security 101 book, Intro to Security type thing, and we taught it in those classes. I explained how these concepts worked and demonstrate their possible impacts. And because our product was so large and diverse, what we ended up realizing was that these discussions in the classes became the most valuable part of the class. We would talk about a concept and then we would bring it back home to them, right? Bring it back to what they do every day so that they can relate. We would ask them, what would it be like if this concept happened in your part of the software? What would the impacts be? What if our company ended up being the cause of a breach like this using one of these concepts? And we know that this connected with people. You'd see their faces light up every once in a while and people would freak out because they would realize something terrible was going on in their part of the software that they had no idea existed, 5 minutes ago. After a little while, we ran into a little problem, though. I had pretty much taught them everything I knew, right? Before each class, I was learning new concepts just to teach them an hour later. I also realized we didn't have much of a goal. Our goal at the time was pretty much get together, learn security stuff, and do what you can with it. And that's not much of a concrete system. So to give everybody something to work towards, we had them go back to their managers and see if they would be able to get the funding to take the Security Plus certification exam. I know the Security Plus isn't exactly the pinnacle of security certifications by any stretch, but you have to remember these were people that had no security knowledge at all to start. So now that we had provided a little value to the QA department by giving their people knowledge that they didn't have previously, we were able to go back and ask for this small amount of funds to take this exam, and they were happy to give it to us. Once we did that, we downloaded materials off the internet, we ordered books, did everything we could to get an edge on that test, and in a couple months, everybody in that class was Security Plus certified. These are people that had never even thought about security a few months before. And sure, the certification's great, but it was much more useful in a symbolic sense. These people now felt part of a security community, right? They felt like they were actual security testers. Instead of it just being a meeting that they go to once a week, it was now they had something on paper to show, look, I know what I'm talking about when it comes to security. To further cement this security tester mindset, we had Bill Senf come out and speak at our company. We had, as a security group, we had just shown QA value by providing this extra knowledge, and then we had shown an additional return on their investment by getting everybody certified, so that their finances weren't in vain, right? So they were more than happy to pay for Bill to come out and speak with us. He spoke to QA and Dev both about some secure testing practices and secure development principles. And afterwards, he even stuck around and had a little round table with the people in the security group. So this really made them feel part of something, right? The same question kept coming up from them, though. What do we do about development? Because QA and development have to operate so closely in sync, but we don't control what the other one does. So if we can't get development on board with what we're doing, then all the security testing and everything we're learning is for nothing, really. What we didn't know, though, was about the scare that development had a few months ago with their customer, and we didn't know that they were actually working on something very similar to what we were doing.
This probably looks familiar to you guys. Even though QA started in a sort of unregimented way, development actually started with structure right out of the gate, because of that little scare. We actually got that executive buy-in and the budget to hire a couple of security dedicated engineers, myself included, and our main goal was to bring the entire development department, which at the time comprised about 170 people, all up to speed into the security practices and the security mindset. And this is what we used. We took the Microsoft SDL, and we just took the parts of it that we thought would work into our process, and we kept those, but then we just threw everything else away, because it's not like we got extra points for just conforming to this whole thing. And we did that because we knew that we couldn't just, plan exactly for everything that was going to happen and foresee all of the obstacles. Each of these teams have their own individual histories and their own individual processes. So we knew there was a lot of adjustment going on. Not only that, but this entire task to begin with is a major task. It's a really big task. So we have to make security work in pretty much the entire development department and eventually in the entire company. How do you even go about that? Just start, is what we found out. Perfect is the enemy of good. We couldn't just sit around perfecting our materials to just deploy them blindly and hope that they would work. We couldn't just plan everything from the beginning. So actually, even nowadays, we still keep adjusting our deployment of the SDL throughout the company because of how differently the teams work and all of the obstacles and changes that we have to face. So how did we take the SDL, which we only understood conceptually and not practically, right? This had never been done before in our company, and actually deploy it company-wide? So this time we actually started from a position of authority to get this process rolling. If you remember our lone security guy from earlier in the story who was trying everything, he was now an associate vice president in the company. And through him, we contacted another manager who was also interested in security and had him enroll one of his teams, who also had a member that was interested in security, but still didn't know much about it. And we made that team the pilot, the team that would lead our pilot project for the SDL. So the message here is that we're getting people that are already part of that process. These teams have been around forever, and they have that little spark of interest. So you're giving them the security message so that it spreads throughout their team and eventually throughout the company more naturally. So we jumped in with both feet and definitely stumbled around. There were lots of obstacles, but we learned from our mistakes and adapted along the way to these processes that had been in place forever. because again, we knew that the more we tried to disrupt these processes, the more pushback we would get. So instead, we have to just add value to the existing processes by showing that security actually is an excellent return on your investment. So again, for a task this big, you just have to start and sort of adapt your way in. And now at this point in the story, we're already a few months in, development's off the ground and QA is off the ground, and security is finally starting to work its way into those rigid processes that have been around at that time for over 20 years. So, that's a pretty big thing. You have to realize, like I said, 20 years of established processes, and here we are a few months in, already getting a little bit of security mindset going on into these teams. It was a pretty big deal, and that's precisely how development, the security teams of development and QA heard about each other, because they had been getting a little bit of traction going on. So naturally, the logical action there was to get together. So we came up with these weekly sync meetings, security syncs we call them, where the QA and development security teams get together to discuss shared goals and shared obstacles and come up with the best possible solution for deploying security company-wide, really. And we still keep them going now, almost a year later, because they really bring a lot of productivity and a lot of value to our work. And in those meetings, we realized that we needed to solve a bigger problem. How can we essentially do this more effectively? Because at the rate that we were going, even though we were seeding teams with subject matter experts, and we were going on a team-by-team basis training those teams in security, it would still take years. We have 170 developers, probably just as many QA people, close to as many, so many teams, and it would take us years to just go through the whole thing slowly. So we started thinking, how can we get our message across to the entire company at once so that we start to raise that bar evenly across the entire field? And we came up with a different sort of solution where we kept doing what we were doing, but we went to our executives and we lobbied to use our big auditorium to host one of the OWASP meetings. So that showed, it was divulged to the entire company that we would host this event, and it sent the message that we as a company were now serious about security. We promoted it as a free experience for everyone to learn a little something about security concepts, and though it was really well attended, actually, we still recorded it, and we have the video in our intranet for some extra added value, lasting value, I should say. So at this point is where things really started to pick up.
Right, we think these were our first real steps towards omnipresence, right? We had built our own place outside of these processes where there previously wasn't one. So if you guys already have yourself a security niche carved out, you're far ahead of where we were at the beginning. From there, as we talked about, we leveraged both the authority existing in these processes, the managers and the vice presidents and things like this, and got them on board. And we also leveraged the people at the bottom, getting people involved and getting them into these classes. So we had people coming in from the top and the bottom of these long-established processes. And we did it by empowering these people as our agents, right? You guys don't have to infiltrate these processes yourself. Right? You don't have to show up at all these meetings. You don't have to force all of these things on yourself. You simply have to give those people that are already involved in these processes and have their established place in them the tools they need to do their own job securely, to develop their own security mindset. Show them it works. Make them evangelists of your ideas. That's the best way in, really. But it's not enough to stay in these processes. As we said before, security is hard. You guys all know this. And people are going to get disillusioned. They're going to get frustrated. Things get difficult, and they're going to drop it. That's why you need to stay on top of them, and you need to keep refining these methods. Without constant evolution, you risk losing everything that you've gained so far. And here's how we kept it going. First, we expanded the QA study group. Instead of just having a group of random QA testers who also happen to be interested in learning about security, we grabbed a representative from each QA team. We did this by going directly to the team leaders and telling them how it was. There are already some people learning these security skills. If your team isn't represented in this group, your team's going to be left behind skill-wise. And your piece of the software is going to be vulnerable to attack, right? And that was enough to get their attention. We got representatives from every team coming, and we called them the QA security champions, right? We started a weekly meeting wherein we would discuss news items and give some sort of lesson on basic security concepts. And we told them, you guys are now the authority for security on each of your teams. If people on your teams have questions about security, they're going to be coming to you for answers, right? So that gave them an incentive to really learn what we were teaching them. And you guys are responsible for spreading the techniques and philosophies that you learn in here to the people on your team. You can't expect them to just meld along. You guys have to spread this message. And we also told them, look, no one else in the company is looking for these vulnerabilities. And it's true, we're the last line of defense. If we don't find these bugs, the bad guys do, and then our customers suffer and our company suffers. And I think that with those messages in place, we really took security to another level for them, right? When they came in, maybe it was just another thing on their plates that they had to do, but we really elevated it, I think, with these ideals. We gave them a new title, essentially. We gave them some authority on their team. And, we gave them a purpose. It was almost like a promotion. Our cause became their cause, right? And they knew their processes better than we ever could. So they knew that they could push that cause through those processes. And once we saw the success that this had in QA, we tried to replicate it in development. And we were successful in that. And that meant that each product team now had 2 security champions on it, right? One in QA and one in development. So that's 2 people pushing security from the inside and us pushing it from above.
For us, this entire process happened very quickly. There are a lot of moving pieces, and a lot of inexperienced people, including ourselves in the beginning, found that we were running entire teams as subject matter experts. So, we had to keep on top of all this stuff, and it was a lot to take in. And in times like those, it's important to have a central theme to point to, a strong goal. And this ended up being our goal. It was actually very clear from the very beginning, probably because of that little scare from before. Implementing our product should never make a customer's environment less secure. So, this is our mantra. We hold on to it, and in each of those QA weekly meetings that we mentioned, we talk about current events related to application security. Most often they're actual breaches that we hear about in the news. And first we just discuss them and go over, what sorts of things could have been done to prevent it, or how could they have handled the whole event better. But then we turn it around and we imagine how would it be like if that breach happened because our product had a failure in that specific component. And that's a very scary thought. There's a lot of discussion around that, and it keeps people motivated and involved. Now, to get things off the ground, that sort of passion and involvement is exactly what you need. But as your security initiative evolves, its needs will also evolve. And to keep your initiative effective without it, dying down when you run into obstacles or when people are starting to get overwhelmed, you need to keep it extremely effective.
So to stay effective, you need a huge variety of viewpoints, is something we found. As much diversity as you can get. I'm talking about cultural diversity. I'm talking about people from different areas of their career path, people with different levels of experience, and especially people from different areas of the processes or product or company that you don't normally deal with or that you might not even know exist. That's what we've done with our dev and QA groups. We've intentionally sought out this diversity, and we've noticed that when we add that diversity, our results, our discussions, everything that we produce is much better for it. And when I say diversity is important, I don't mean limiting that to your own, security clique. I mean bringing in the rest of the company. If you run into a problem that you think could benefit from some sort of marketing perspective, don't just try and guess at what the marketing department would do, right? Bring somebody from marketing in. That gets you a much better answer. It gets your name out there a little farther, and it gets you an ally where you previously didn't have one. Getting your name out in the company is really important because security is a mindset, right? It's not really all that important, honestly, that we teach our QA people to be penetration testers. I mean, that's great, and the more skills that they learn is better for everybody, but it's not really all that necessary. What's important is that we communicate the main concepts thoughtfully and completely. I mean, I'll be honest, most of my QA people probably couldn't tell you the difference between symmetric and asymmetric cryptography. But that doesn't really matter because what they do know is that when their developer says, yeah, we're going to secure this connection with RC4, they know that's a trigger word and they know to say, wait, why are we doing that? They know to take their developer to task, find out why are we not using something stronger. And that's how your influence increases, right? That's how you become what we were calling omnipresent. You can't be in every design meeting. You definitely can't be in all the stand-ups and little meetings that are going on. But if the people that are already in those meetings, already involved in those processes, are asking the questions and making the statements that you would make if you were there, you don't need to be in those meetings. Just arm them with the ability to ask these questions and the ability to understand these answers that they're going to get back. And just make it known that you're available for fallback. If they need to escalate an issue, let them know that you're there for them.
And once you're at that level, you won't have to worry so much about getting security integrated where it matters most in all of those crucial points because you have your agents there for you. So at that point, you can start working at getting the rest of the company, the entire rest of the company, into the fold. So grab a few minutes on the agenda of each department meeting, and show how your main processes are integrating security into the things that they're already doing. Make yourselves available to help them and show them how they can get involved into this initiative. We have, for example, a group in our intranet where we write a few blog posts or post news and discussions about application security. We post events such as today. And one time we actually had a really cool event called the Tech Touch Tuesday, where we invited the entire company to that big auditorium I talked about. We gave them every person, we gave them a laptop with a pre-built VM on it that had Matilda and Broken Web Apps, BWAP, and a free version of Burp. And then first and these were salespeople, accounting people, and marketing people. So at first we gave them a quick presentation about general security concepts and why security is important and why essentially the web has the potential to be really broken, and in a lot of places it is. And then we fired up that VM and we slowly went through some basic exercises. They got to do some HTML injection, some basic XSS. So everyone learned a little something about security in general and about our own initiative within the company. So that's how you go from infiltrating just the business processes to completely permeating the corporate culture. You can use your skills to create that culture of security. And now you're no longer an outsider. And because your message can be found everywhere in the company at this point, you can actually start pushing for those big security changes or items in your list. For example, we added an entire tab to our bug tracking system that deals with security vulnerabilities specifically. We sent out a guide on how to use it, and we got zero pushback from the company. We started advising other departments on their security practices, essentially, making more requirements and more work for them. But still, we got no pushback because now they knew the company was serious about security. Like I said, at this point, we were fully integrated. It was part of the culture, and throughout the entire process, we were always making sure that everyone knew that we were there, available for questions, available to help if they needed extra help. That means that they weren't on their own completely, and at the same time, we weren't stealing control away from the processes that they already had been used to all these years.
So we talked a lot about how we got to where we were, so now we'd like to share a few of our most interesting results with you guys. Obviously, this process is never done, but this is what we've got so far. So as Marion alluded to earlier, we have 170 developers right now and about as many QA people. Our product is over 20 years old, so there's incredible amounts of vulnerabilities in it. And we talk about legacy code, integrations, all of this stuff that's going on in our product. It's a huge product. And the year before we had started this, the QA department and everybody involved with looking for security bugs or bugs of any kind in the software found 50 bugs that whole year, 50 possible vulnerabilities that whole year. After we started this, we reached that same number within 3 months because of the increased awareness and the increased techniques of the developers and the QA people involved in those processes.
And here are some of the big security changes that we were able to push. SSL by default and no default passwords. So when a customer is installing our product in their environment for the first time, we prompt them to create a new account instead of just giving them these super powerful accounts by default. And we're not finished with crypto yet, but we've done at least a basic sweep of crypto. Strengthening some algorithms that we were using and pinpointing places where our implementation is a little bit flawed. And also standardizing the implementation of cryptography across the entire product, where we're telling people don't try to make your own thing, don't use some obscure algorithm somewhere. We have this standard class now that you can use that was recently written. So these were very good changes that we're able to push.
And we've also seen a lot more support from our executives. Like we talked about earlier, before we had one security guy, and he was having trouble even having people attend his classes, and he just couldn't get any resources. Now this year we're on track to spend tens of thousands of dollars on static analysis tools, on proxies, on all kinds of testing tools. And training that will help our existing testers and developers do their jobs more securely. We also have a professional development budget now. We send people to conferences. We speak at conferences. We have people come in and talk. These are all things that wouldn't have been possible without some sort of executive backing. And the last one, I think the one we're most proud of, is that our company has this education system inside. Pretty much any role that you're in has several classes you can attend to, there's a sales academy, there's some marketing classes that you can go to increase your acumen in those areas. We've added a security track to both the dev and QA tracks. So if you are a developer or QA or even actually somewhere else outside of those roles, if you really have an interest in security, there are now several classes that we've designed that you can take internally.
And lastly, we've experienced this really wonderful effect that we're calling a reverse outreach effect, where previously, we were the ones chasing people to get them to conform with security. So we were chasing other departments, other managers to get them to work with us. Now, because the company has heard about us and has heard about our efforts and our initiatives, other departments are coming to us. They hear about these things, and they have obviously their own unique perspectives on their own product that we perhaps would never see because we don't work with it every day. So now they're coming to us, and they're thinking, oh, maybe there's a vulnerability here. Let me go ask these guys. Let me work with them to get it sorted out. Secondly, corporate events. We initially had to lobby for the space and lobby for some funding to get some corporate events rolling. Now, twice already, the company has just come to us to have us participate or initiate security-specific events for the company as a whole. And lastly, and probably the most cool one, we really seem to have ignited a security spark on people. I'm going to reference a specific example of this lady who's in the QA champions group. She happens to work in a team that's unusually large for the average team size at our company. And she probably is one of the ones who started with the least amount of security knowledge, if any at all. But nonetheless, because of our discussions and all of the values that we were bringing to those meetings, she actually went to her team lead or team lead or manager and requested that another team member join her. So she was not only dedicating her own time away from her team, she was, getting someone else in to those meetings and really spread the security message. She actually comes up with the best questions too. It's really amazing. So, not to get all ancient Chinese secret on everybody, but if you take one thing away from our talk, we want it to be this. A leader is best when people barely know he exists. When his work is done, his aim fulfilled, they will say we did it ourselves. And this is the crux of what we're trying to get across here. You don't have to be everywhere, and you don't have to do everything yourself. If you give them the tools and the resources to do it themselves and to integrate security practices into these processes, then you don't have to force anything. Security will just spread throughout these existing processes already. You just let them take their own way and just guide from the background. That's really the best way to make the security mindset stick. That's the best way to be everywhere at once, to be omnipresent. Thank you. If anyone has questions, now's the time. As you can see. Yes.
Talk about testing tools. I'm assuming you guys do some type of continuous integration.
Yes.
Do you actually integrate with that yet? Or is that upcoming?
Yeah, good question. The question was, we were talking about testing tools, and we do have continuous integration. So have we integrated our testing tools into our continuous integration environment? And the answer is that's in process. Those static analysis tools are coming up. I'll probably have them. I'm the lead for that specific project, so I'll probably have them ready by the end of the month, and then slowly we will integrate them with every build, so that if it catches something nasty, it will actually break the build and send it back to the developer in charge. Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Yes.
You mentioned originally you were just logging security bugs along with just regular bugs. How has that changed now that your process is mature?
Yeah, you want to answer that one?
Sure. So the question was, originally we were logging bugs along with security vulnerabilities. How has that changed now that we've got a stronger security posture? You may have heard us mention that we have actually added an entire tab to our bug tracking system. That's a security tab, and it lays out, the cause, the possible exploits, all these things, and we also sent a guide out along with them and let everybody in QA and development know how exactly to use this, and to let them know not to be afraid to be wrong when they're putting it, because it is a complex field, and it is sometimes difficult to decipher exactly where a certain bug falls. But we get all of those, and then we review them to make sure that everything is correct. And we have a whole bulletin process where if a bug is severe enough, we go ahead and issue a bulletin to our customers. Security vulnerabilities are generally given priority over other bugs if we, as the security team, deem them severe enough.
Let me add something.
Yeah.
The tab is also classified by the STRIDE threat types. So essentially, and that's what we use to classify our bugs, and that's what we use to train people when we're rolling out the SDL. So essentially, we told everyone, here's this classification. Don't worry too much about it. If you're not 100% on target, that's fine. We'd rather have false positives than miss it completely. And at the same time, we're laying out that baseline so that when we do come to their team specifically to train them more in depth in the SDL, they'll have this in the back of their heads, the STRIDE categorization and the whole flow of things. Yes.
Modify your code review process to go more security focused?
Did we modify our code review process to be more security focused? The answer is yes. We haven't done it for the entire company yet because we are rolling the SDL team by team. Now we do plan on accelerating the process by training at least one person in each team, those security champions, with some introductory material. And then when we come to their team specifically, we'll go more in depth. But the entire process of the SDL involves the code review and involves setting a what Microsoft calls a bug bar, so that if they come across any vulnerabilities that are, for instance, high or critical in their rating, they have to remediate it, or they have to come up with a reason why they're not remediating, and that reason has to be approved by the higher-ups.
And this is another example where having us as a fallback is very important. Like Marion said, we're giving these developers, the security champions, a baseline of knowledge to conduct these rudimentary security code reviews where none was done previously, and they know that they can come across certain things, and if they don't quite understand it, they know that they have Marion and the rest of us to fall back on. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.